All right, hello and welcome to IntraMITTEN Sports, the channel where we cover the Detroit Lions, Detroit Tigers, Detroit Pistons, and Michigan Wolverines. So if you're a fan of 1, 2, 3, or all 4 of those teams, go ahead and subscribe right here. Hit that bell notification so you don't miss any of the Michigan sports action. Today, we're talking Detroit Pistons basketball, Phil. The first time we've done one of these in the history of our channel, pretty much. So let's get right into it. The Pistons had an amazing, interesting draft, to say the least. First-year general manager Troy Weaver from the Oklahoma City Thunder brought the Thunder by getting you like that, didn't you? By getting 3 picks in the first round. He had to do a lot of work in order to get that, but it was much needed as the Pistons went 20-46 in the 2020 season. So, Phil, let's start from scratch here. 3 picks in the first round. Talk about them now. What do you think about them?
All right, so first off was pick number 7, where they grabbed the Frenchman, Killian Hayes. He's from France. He's a guard, point guard. He can shoot a little bit, but he's more of a 1 than a 2. 6'5", 190, so really good size out of him. He's a lefty, so that's exciting, left-handed players. Another fun fact, he is really good friends with Sekou Doumbia, who's already a Piston. They played together growing up in France. Really, really good value pick there. Outside of Derrick Rose, the guard play for the Pistons was pretty weak last season. And even with that, Rose is starting to get up there in age, especially with his injury history and whatnot. So this is definitely a pick for the future. A lot of scouts are pretty high on Hayes, where he's more of a raw guy. I mean, obviously it's the draft, so a lot of these guys are young and raw, but they see a lot of potential in him. It was one of the ESPN writers actually had Hayes as his number 1 guy as a future prospect. He thinks there's a lot of potential there with him. He's a really smart guy. He's not the most explosive or anything off the dribble, but he makes plays. Gets a little fancy with the ball is his biggest knock right now. He tries to do a little bit too much, tries to look a little too cool out there. So needs to work on the decision making, but overall, phenomenal vision. He's going to be a really good passer. The one thing he needs to work on the most is driving and getting to the hole. Right now, he's kind of into pulling up for jumpers and that sort of thing. And he has a decent shot. He's not amazing, but he's not bad. But he needs to learn how to attack the basket, and that'll come. So, but we're really excited for that. That's an A+ grade on that pick for sure. Killian Hayes out of France. The next move was at number 16. There was a trade, and through the trade, we'll get to that in a second, they were able to pick up Isaiah Stewart out of the University of Washington. He's a center, stands about 6'9", 250, and a ton of people hate this pick. He can shoot a little bit outside, but for the most part, he's a big body guy who wants to go down low and beat you up. Pistons channel, so he's kind of like a Rick Mahorn, Bill Laimbeer type. Like, he wants to go down, scrap it up, and get feisty, but the NBA isn't played that way anymore, right? So, it's kind of a lost art. It'll be real interesting to see what they do with him. He had a really good year at Washington, so 17 points, 9 rebounds, and 2 blocks per game as a freshman. That'll certainly play, and also only being a freshman, you would hope that he might still grow. Like I said, he's 6'9". If he can add another inch or two, he's already at 250, so he doesn't need to really add weight, but just tone up, even though, honestly, if you look at a picture of him, he is already pretty ripped. So it's an interesting pick. Bit of a reach, I would say, overall, but Weaver loves big dudes, as we're going to see coming up here. He just likes them real tall, and this is one of them, Isaiah Stewart out of Washington. So that was a pick. We'll see what happens, sort of deal.
All right. And how about my third one, which personally, I didn't tell you this beforehand, but this is my favorite of the 3. So talk about the third one here.
Yeah. So Saddiq Bey out of Villanova, 6'8", 215. He's like a combo forward type guy, a 3 or a 4. Really, really smooth handles for a bigger guy. He can stretch the floor. He is a 3-point shooter. He loves the ball in his hands. I watched a little highlight tape of him on whatever NBA draft website I was looking at, and he's got it, man. He's going through the legs, trying to shake guys, pull up 3, all that good stuff. Really, really good value pick here. Villanova just churns out studs, man. Jay Wright does a really good job with that program. So, and again, they had to move up to get this pick that was involved with a bunch of other trades and whatnot. really good value here, where Isaiah Stewart was a bit of a reach at 16, Bey at 19. It was like, hey, really good job there. Again, 6'8", so he's another guy who's up there in height. He projects really well, though, for the future. I like that pick a lot.
Gotcha. So anytime you get 3 picks like that in the first round, though, there's always the downside of losing some fan favorites, losing some really good guys.
Yeah.
Particularly for me, it'd be Luke Kennard and Christian Wood. Those are some pieces that I'm sad to see go, although Luke had his injury issues. Was a solid shooter, to say the least, and that was something that Detroit had been lacking for a while. So talk about some of the pieces that we had to move out in order to make all of this happen.
Right. So how about Weaver? He was just hired in June, by the way, as the new GM of the Pistons. Comes in hot. He actually made the first transaction.
He's playing no games
of the offseason. He didn't hold off at all. He was ready to go. He traded Bruce Brown, who actually put in some pretty quality minutes. The guy out of Miami, he was a rookie in 2018. So this was last year was his second year with the team. Really good defensive guard. Didn't do a ton on the scoring end, but he could do a little bit. He was sent to Brooklyn for, let me see if I can get this right, Jeanine Moussa is how you pronounce it. He's a 21-year-old, 6'9", 215 from somewhere in Europe. And so he came over and he was also a rookie in 2018. Supposed to be a pretty big deal with his specialty being he's an outside shooter. But how about he shot 24% from 3 last year?
That sounds like a specialty.
Yeah, no, he's really got it going for him. So they traded Bruce Brown for him, and there was some cash and picks, second rounders involved with all that. I don't have written down all the different transactions. There's a ton of traded this for this and that for that and whatever. A ton of moves were made. The other move that you mentioned was Luke Kennard leaving, which was interesting. He was the first round pick in 2017 for Detroit. A guy he was hurt all the time, I felt like, but when he played, showed a ton of potential. He's got that lefty stroke, pretty good shooter, good playmaker, good size. He's kind of like a left-handed Gordon Hayward, kind of, is what I would call him too. But he got sent out to the Clippers as part of a 3-way deal that helped land the Stewart pick. Or no, so that was Houston. That helped land the Bey pick. I'm telling you, it's confusing, man. There's a lot going on.
Yeah.
So they got the extra pick from Bey, and then also coming back from the Clippers, they got Jahlil Hayes out of UCLA, who's another youngster. So basically the plan for Weaver coming in here was just load up on young talent and see what happens.
How about this? As we near towards the end of all this, it's because I feel like we're just going to confuse ourselves and everybody watching. So I think everybody got the gist of it. We lost some good guys. We got some good guys. What about some of the signees that we had? Some guys that have left outside of that. What happened outside of just the regular moving pieces and chess play?
So you mentioned Christian Wood. He's gone in a sign and trade with Houston. That's what allowed us to get the Isaiah Stewart pick. It brought back that first rounder plus Trevor Ariza. Trevor Ariza was later flipped for another piece somewhere. We won't get into that too much. Moves were made. Christian Wood's gone. I'm not too upset about that. He had a really good season last year. He's probably the most valuable player on the Pistons last season, but he's also like a fifth-year guy. And why wasn't he doing this in his first 4 years? He kind of bounced around the league, played for different teams. Pistons weren't great, so maybe they were just feeding him the rock, and that's why he put up good numbers. He got his payday, so good for him. But I'm not too upset losing him. I don't think he's a huge piece, mainly because on free agency, we picked up Jerami Grant from the Nuggets, who had a phenomenal bubble once they restarted the season. He was a hot name all throughout the league. A ton of people wanted him. Detroit signed him 3 years for $60 million, so $20 million a year. They also signed Mason Plumlee off the Nuggets, Jahlil Okafor, and Josh Jackson. Josh Jackson was the former number 4 overall pick in 2017. He's a Detroit kid. A ton of potential with him. He went to Kansas. Didn't really catch on anywhere in Phoenix. Moved on to Memphis. He got in trouble at Memphis. They let him go. So they're going to take a flyer on Josh Jackson. He has so much potential. I think that could be a really big pickup. Jahlil Okafor is another guy who I think he was 17-7 as a rookie in 2015. He's got a ton of potential, man. He doesn't really play D, so that's a thing. But offensively, I think he's a really good player. So, again, these are guys who have kind of been cast off by other teams. Weaver's going to roll the dice with them, man, see what the Pistons can do with it. Overall, now we're looking at a potential lineup of Derrick Rose at point guard, my boy Svi Mykhailiuk. Learned that one too, starting a shooting guard probably. Jerami Grant, small forward. Blake Griffin at power forward. and then probably Plumlee at center as like the starting five. And then some other pieces. Killian Hayes will probably come off the bench. Doumbia coming off the bench. Okafor off the bench. Jackson there as well. So there's pieces. I'm not expecting a ton out of this team, but there should be some pretty fun games. One thing I will say that didn't happen that I was kind of expecting was Blake Griffin is still on this team.
And Derrick Rose.
And Derrick Rose. Derrick Rose is on a pretty friendly contract, so that's not too big of a deal. But Blake Griffin is making a ton of money. And for a team that's rebuilding, you don't really want to drop, $30 million plus on a guy who's not going to really bring you to the playoffs or elevate you to a championship. One move I would have loved to have seen is trade Blake Griffin and the number 7 to the Warriors for the number 2 and Andrew Wiggins. I think that would have been a really cool trade. Wiggins would have given us perimeter scoring, plus the number 2 pick overall would have been huge. You could either use that on Ball or Wiseman. Either one of those guys would have been good, but it didn't happen. So we're just going to roll with what we got here, and we'll see what happens, man.
All right. Let me get a off the cuff here. Didn't talk about this either. Little off the cuff draft grade, and then give me an off the cuff grade with all the transactions and everything that we did.
Sure. Overall draft grade, I'm going to give it like a solid B+, man. The Stewart thing is a real project, but I think there's a lot of potential. I think Hayes is a great pick, and I think Bey is a great pick. So those two definitely counter the questionable pick of Stewart. So overall draft grade B+, and then plus all the moves. I just love seeing the moves. How weird is it to see Detroit being active like that?
Yeah, it's good to see.
They signed Grant. Like, what free agent has signed there that's worth anything in the past few years? So that's really cool to see. So I'm happy to see Weaver doing things. I don't think the team is going to compete next year, but they're certainly building for the future, and I think they have a lot of potential. Give it a couple years. I think they could be something.
Yeah, that's good to hear, man. It was exciting to say the least. We weren't planning on even doing a video of this nature, but we were like, you know what?
Too many moves. We had to do it.
There was so much done. A video needs to be made. So we made it. Phil, I think that pretty much covers it. So appreciate you joining us here today to talk Pistons basketball, the first on this channel of many to come as the football season starts to wrap up. We'll definitely be covering much more of the Pistons from here on out here on Intermittent Sports, where we cover the Detroit Lions, Detroit Tigers, Detroit Pistons, and Michigan Wolverines. Don't forget to subscribe, hit that bell notification, make sure you like the video, and we'll see you next time.